A portion of today's video is sponsored by Rocket Money. More about them later. Hello my dudes, welcome back to Internet Analysis. Today I want to talk about family vlogging, specifically from the lens of the children who are now growing up and speaking about their experiences. I've been a big hater of family vloggers for many years. Some of my earliest Internet Analysis videos were about just that, and I stand by it. I still believe that we need to be very critical of this genre so that we can protect the privacy and the well-being of these kids who are ultimately being exploited by their parents for views and money. I'm going to be talking through this book, The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie, who is the eldest child of Ruby Frankie. There was a very popular family vlogging channel called 8 Passengers. They had over 2 million subscribers at their peak, and it was run by mom Ruby Frankie. This was a super classic family vlog, you know, Mormon family based in Utah. They've got 6 kids, plenty of characters to focus on, whether you're talking about the kids' activities or who they have a crush on or mom running errands, you know, the typical mundane things that are featured in family vlogs. And of course with the undercurrent of conservative, traditional family values. You've probably heard about this story in the news. Ruby Frankie got involved with Jodi Hildebrandt, who basically ran a culty life coaching program called Connections. And in August 2023, Ruby and Jodi were arrested and charged with aggravated child abuse. It's kind of the perfect storm within the true crime community. You've got this like perfect influencer family, rich and famous, and then all of a sudden these big dark secrets come out. But again, today's video is not going to get too deeply into all of that. I'm just going to focus on really the family vlogger YouTube angle of this book. There's a lot more to the narrative, complicated relationships with the LDS church, coming of age stuff, generational trauma, and of course the arrests of Ruby and Jodi. But overall, I think this was really well written and very powerful. I definitely recommend reading it for yourself. Ultimately, I think it is crucial that we listen to the children who have been raised in these family vlogger situations, listen to their concerns and their experiences, and as more of them are growing up and becoming adults, we are finally hearing the reality of what this is like. Not just the carefully edited, curated vision that their parents, who are exploiting and monetizing them, have sold us. So let's dive in. Sherry explains her strained relationship with her mother, Ruby. Even as a young child, she constantly tried to win her mother's approval, but she never felt that Ruby loved or even liked her. And even before they got involved in family vlogging, Ruby had always been very strict and sometimes verbally or physically abusive. Throughout this book, aside from her brother Chad, who's the second eldest child, Sherry does not name her youngest siblings in order to protect their privacy, and I really respect that. So first we have to start with the Mormon mommy vlogger of it all. Sherry writes about how her aunts, her mother's sisters, Ellie and Bonnie, already had existing family vlogging channels, and Ruby was inspired by their success. And then she gets into how Mormonism really encourages this and is like a perfect match for family vlogging. In many ways, family vlogging is a very LDS aligned pursuit, a natural extension of our traditional practices. Vlogging offers a modern form of bearing testimony and keeping personal and family records while simultaneously engaging in passive missionary work. Vlogs mean church members can share the faith, values, and daily lives with a global audience, potentially attracting interest in the church and its teachings. In a way, the synergy between YouTube and LDS families seemed almost predestined. Honestly, Mormon influencers taking over social media is like one of my favorite rabbit holes. I have to do a video about it someday. It's honestly harder to name like a mommy influencer or blogger or vlogger family that is not Mormon. They really are incredibly popular and well connected to each other. Like the very first family vlogging channel that I remember becoming aware of was the Shaytards, a name that was very of its time, run by Shay Carl, who has now had numerous scandals, but anyway, Mormon family, lots of kids, and they're even still active today. Their channel bio says, "If life's worth living, then it's worth recording." But seriously, the web of Mormon influencers goes so deep. Many of these families are connected either because they are directly related to each other or they're living within the same communities, especially in Utah. Obviously, we've got mom talk influencers. Recently, there's been so much talk about ballerina farms for good reason. It's a very powerful media ecosystem. Sherry writes, "Perhaps that's why Utah and the broader LDS community have become such powerhouses in the realms of family vlogging and traditional lifestyle content creation. Some of the earliest and most successful family vlogging channels have come from our communities, documenting life with multiple children, showcasing the appeal of family life to a mainstream audience, while demonstrating how modern media can be harnessed to share testimonies and values in a relatable, engaging way." It is so fascinating, and again, the role that the Mormon church plays in this, like actively encouraging LDS members to become influencers. Again, I will cover that more deeply in another video, but there are Exmo influencers if you'd like to hear more, like Jordan and McKay. There are so many great channels that help with unpacking Mormonism and especially like Mormon creators. But anyway, people joke that for family vloggers, having more kids is a great way to boost your views. But honestly, it is true. It provides tons of new content. Every new kid is another journey of trying to get pregnant, gender reveal parties, pregnancy updates, birth vlogs, newborn routines, and everything else that follows. More kids and new kids keep things fresh and exciting in a vlog. And then you've got a whole range of different ages and a wider potential appeal for viewers. And it's even more interesting because these days, outside of evangelicals and Mormons, birth rates are generally dropping. Many people are not having kids, or if they are, they might be one and done because having kids is very expensive and stressful, or at least they're waiting a few years between kids. OBs recommend waiting like 18 months after birth before trying to get pregnant again in order to let your body recover. But in the context of lifestyle or family vlogging content, that would be a very long time for your audience to wait. It's much more exciting if you were getting pregnant every year or two. You want the age gaps to be very small between those kids. And obviously, again, the religious elements encourage having more and more kids and not having contraception. So back to the Frankies. If Ellie and Bonnie could transform the mundane into gold, surely Ruby could craft an empire and prove to the world, and perhaps to herself, that she, Ruby Frankie, was not just a mother, but a matriarch worthy of widespread admiration and emulation. This is where I learned that all of Ruby's siblings had been YouTubers at some point or another. A lot of them are still active though. Ellie from Ellie and Jared, Julie, Bonnie, her brother Beau, even her parents have a vlog channel. Again, creating this literal family network of content creators is very advantageous. You have tons of natural opportunities for cross-promotion, and then as all of the kids grow up, they can make their own channels and then have their own families and continue the cycle. So in January 2015, Ruby posted her first YouTube video on the 8 Passengers channel. And can I just say, this 8 Passengers intro? It's very Coraline. They literally have button eyes. It's very strange because like the whole family is pretty much blonde or like light haired, so it doesn't even look like them. But anyway, I just thought that was like an ominous kind of unintentional foreshadowing, I guess. So Sherry writes about what it was like to start to have her mother filming everything. We never chose to be internet celebrities. But that made no difference. Soon our lives revolved around non-stop content creation, whether we liked it or not. Birthdays, barbecues, even lazy Sunday afternoons, no moment was too mundane to escape documentation. Ruby, her sisters, and her brother Beau were now constantly filming us for their respective vlogs. You couldn't sneeze without it being immortalized from multiple angles. One camera is plenty of pressure and an invasion of privacy, but multiple cameras at every family event really makes it hard to avoid being filmed. You couldn't possibly keep track of who is recording what and when, so it would be impossible to just relax and act natural. And also, just as a viewer, like, if you are a fan of multiple of these channels, this content ends up being very boring and repetitive if you're seeing all the same things happen across multiple videos. That was also a problem for like the vlog squad. And yet these vlogging groups still tend to be very popular. So Sherry had been 12 when her mom started this channel, and she said the constant surveillance was excruciating. Obviously, being an awkward teenager, not feeling totally comfortable in yourself yet, is a terrible time to have a camera shoved in your face. You're already feeling just weird and like insecure at a baseline, but to be filmed and have that put online for the public adds such a major layer of stress and discomfort. She writes, "The worst part? The internet ate it up. Everyone seemed to love what Ruby was posting, which of course encouraged her to post more. She knew that in the wild west of social media, consistency is king. You have to post regularly, which meant every little moment was mined for content. First steps, lost teeth, epic tantrums, you name it, Ruby filmed it." Again, really try to imagine being a child, being at home or going out to your activities, and everything that you typically would maybe go to your parents to talk about or you're experiencing and maybe want to process in private. No, instead, cameras in your face and it's going to become the new title and thumbnail of tomorrow's upload. But before we continue, this portion of today's video is sponsored by Rocket Money. Rocket Money is an all-in-one personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions, lower bills, and manage your money better. My husband and I finally just put all of our different accounts and assets together under one Rocket Money account. Very overdue. So now we have a complete overview of our family finances. Especially with our new baby, we just needed a refresh, time to reorganize so that we can keep track of our expenses and savings goals. We've created our customized budget, so now we have a clearer, more accurate view of what money is coming in and where exactly it is going. Rocket Money is also great for keeping track of your subscriptions. If you find any that you no longer use or want, you can cancel with just a few taps. In doing this process, we realized that we had both been paying for some of the same subscriptions, so we canceled a few, and others we switched to family accounts that cost less than 2 individual accounts. And those quick changes are saving us about $50 a month, so that really adds up. Take control of your finances today. You can go to rocketmoney.com/tiffanyferg to get started for free. Next, Sherry writes about their first big viral video. Baby climbs out of crib. I don't get it. My sister in her nursery had climbed out of her crib for the first time. What was so interesting about that? As the weeks turned into months, that crib video continued its astonishing ascent, racking up views by the millions. 10 million, 20 million. By the year's end, an unfathomable 50 million strangers had glimpsed into our lives. 50 million views. That is insane. So I tried to find it. The whole 8 Passengers channel has been taken down, rightfully so, but re-uploads do exist. I did find the video, and it's not a particularly funny or cute moment like you would expect of something that goes viral. Essentially, the video shows the toddler trying to climb out of her crib. She's reaching her leg up and over the side, trying to get out, and this goes on for like 30 seconds. It's filmed from a somewhat low angle, and she is wearing a dress and a diaper. And this is the part of family vlogging that I hate talking about the most, but it is well documented that creeps and predators will seek out innocuous content of children, like kids doing gymnastics or swimming. And it makes me sick to my stomach, but that is the only reason I can think of that this video would get that many views. And actually even worse, I just realized that she's not even wearing a dress, that is an unbuttoned onesie, which makes it being open to be filmed in this little segment seem like an even more intentional choice. Because again, her mother wasn't even filming like a candid moment. This was a setup thing. She's like, oh, you climbed out of your crib, do it again for us, do it for the camera. Every bit of this video is a decision. There are so many choices involved in vlogging. What do you film? How do you film it? What do you decide to keep in the edit, and what do you cut out? So in this situation, Ruby decided to reenact that, film it, and made it the entire focus of a 4-minute video, and then she was rewarded with millions of views. And this really sheds light on, again, who watches these family channels. Of course, I don't have access to other channels' viewer demographics. I can guess that some viewers are other moms or parents. Plenty of the viewers are kids themselves. I remember back in the day when they still had comment sections, you could tell there were children who were like, I'm 5, so-and-so is the same age as me. Then within those comment sections, you could also see spelled out that there were people watching for nefarious reasons. And too often they would be catered to. Parents can pretend to be naive and just post innocently, even though they've been warned about who could be and are watching. Because these channels themselves have access to their own analytics. You can see who is watching, the age ranges, you can see when videos are embedded on other sites, which websites they're being posted to, whether they're being shared in like messaging apps. And when a video of a child doing something very innocuous, and again, frankly, uninteresting, when those videos get crazy numbers of views and like the numbers of shares on TikTok, for example, that should concern you, not be cause for celebration that your video's going viral. I cannot state how much I absolutely despise this. Again, when we say family vloggers are exploiting their children for money, putting them at risk, we mean it. We're not exaggerating. And yet these parents are choosing to completely ignore that and pretend like it doesn't exist. Caroline Easam made this video.
And one of my first characters that really took off was the Victorian child. So I made this character who was supposed to be about 10 years old, and not long after I started doing this character, this person became obsessed with that character in an inappropriate way, and they would comment these explicit scenarios involving that character on my videos, but also they would come into my lives and they would comment that live. If I, as an adult woman, am receiving this type of attention, what are the kids dealing with? And that led me down a rabbit hole.
I also really appreciate the TikTok account Mom Uncharted. Her whole mission is like, kids are not content. These articles and exposés came out in 2019. The information is well known. And actually the reason that YouTube ended up disabling comments on videos featuring children is because of those predatory comments. Advertisers were pulling out because they obviously didn't want to be on these sorts of videos. So the solution was to just take away the troubling comment sections to act like the problem no longer exists. Yet the videos of kids are still allowed and recommended in the algorithm. Again, the vast majority of these videos that I'm talking about are innocuous. They're innocent. They're just children. A lot of them are posting videos of themselves, but those also get mixed up and recommended in the same groups as family vlogger content. Anyway, the fact that this baby climbs out of crib was their first viral video that provided the first initial boost for their channel makes so much sense in the worst way. This is when family vloggers learn what sort of content gets views. And again, they should be worried, but instead they're like, oh, that's good. We can do more content about that. Personal videos, private videos, like teenage girls talking about puberty or shaving or their first periods. Parents coming and asking them these invasive questions to share with the public.
We can't be naive to the detriment of the kids. You have to assume that everything you post on the public internet is being viewed by the worst people, and there's no excuse to give these people access to our kids when we simply do not have to.
So continuing on, Sherry writes, as our YouTube channel evolved, so did our home. Ruby invested heavily in remodeling, every change designed to please the camera's eye. Sterile, but oh so photogenic. The result was a picturesque facade, perfect for the camera, but perhaps a bit too perfect for real life. A visual symbol of our transition from an ordinary family to YouTube stars. I listened to the Celebrity Memoir Book Club episode about this book, and they made the point that like, how much of our very beige and minimalist aesthetic choices in the past decade stem from influencer choices. What is best for social media, for photos, for videos? Is it a chicken or egg situation? Especially for vloggers, so much of their living space choices are based on what works on camera. You want generous natural light, open spaces, and even like convenient little perches to place the camera on. Sherry writes, we even removed the house numbers to avoid the hassle of having to blur them in videos. And that's good. Obviously you don't want your house numbers shown, but you're still filming the facade of your house, which can be very recognizable. For a long time, I've been fascinated by these questions involving lifestyle and vlogging content. Like, at what point are we just doxing ourselves? Sure, people don't share their address, but I've seen many creators film their daily routines, walking out of their building, down the street to their favorite coffee shop. Oh, this is the Target we frequent. You're literally sharing where you go and when. You might not think you're revealing much, but you definitely are. Later in the book, Sherry writes about how the family gets a new car and they got an 8-passenger's license plate and they put an 8-passenger sticker on the back, obviously to promote the channel, but like you're also literally allowing strangers or anyone nearby to recognize you and what, follow you around? Follow you home? I'm sure like the local Mormon community probably already knew of them and where they lived and everything, but like not everyone has good intentions. Seems a little wild to do that. Seems like a crazy risk to take, but a very egotistical choice as well, to want to show yourself off and not consider the ramifications of what you're doing. Oh, actually that echoes family vlogging in general. Anything you can do for self-promo, don't worry about what kind of concerns or consequences could come. Sherry writes, for me, every video shoot remained a special kind of torture. I could never get used to it or relax. Thankfully, I found a silver lining in this heinous new situation. Leverage. Ruby wanted me as her happy, smiling co-star. It was going to cost her. A trip to the mall, a get out of chores free card, a shiny new gadget, whatever I needed at the time. Honestly, good for you. These children, because they're being forced to work in this way and perform, they deserve all the treats and goodies. They should be getting some good stuff out of this. It doesn't make up for anything, but you know, there can be small benefits. Ruby told them, if you film your ice cream outing, you can pay for it with the 8-passengers credit card. Just think, free food and a tax write-off. Now this, I have to go on a tangent about this because influencer taxes are still the Wild West. What are valid business expenses or write-offs, especially when your work is sharing your life? Getting ice cream is content. You need the ice cream for the content, so is it a fair business expense? I am obviously not a tax professional and I work with pros to figure out my own content creation tax labyrinths, but we do know that many influencers and especially vloggers work by this logic. So are they potentially getting tax write-offs for like most of their living expenses? As long as they're filming everything? This definitely explains why so many family channels make these big shopping trip or haul videos, buying thousands of dollars of groceries and snacks, or kids are spending $5,000 back to school shopping. Again, this doesn't mean that they're getting this stuff for free. They're still paying for it. But if it is a write-off, they're not paying taxes on the amount that they spent, which obviously can save them a ton. Sherry writes, I became fluent in the language of tax loopholes before I could even drive. Outfit hauls, trips to the mall, I learned it could all be written off as a business expense. If I filmed in the car on our way to the amusement park, even gas could be written off. It did start to feel like we'd hacked the system. Why wouldn't everyone want to make a living by turning their kids into content, by commodifying every moment from cradle to college? And I think that's it. I think many people do dream of being influencers or become influencers because of that. They want to hack the system. They want to participate too. Because the actual work is not really that stressful. If you have a daily vlog, that is a grind. It can be exhausting to be constantly filming and editing day after day, but soon you could afford to pay an editor. So that cuts down your workload. And then all you have to do is film everything. But really just live your life. And the more fun you have, the better your videos will be. It's a win-win. And I've thought about this over the years because as a content creator, I am often analyzing influencer lifestyles. I'm like partially in it, but I'm also watching from a distance because what I do is a little bit different. And to me, the vlogger lifestyle seems pretty ideal. I personally couldn't do it because I value my privacy too much, but if you're into it, there are a lot of benefits. Like the potential for monetization is not comparable from like a commentary or video essay channel to a daily vlogging channel, for example. Like I can make a max of 1 to 2 videos a month, so I'm limited to 1 to 2 sponsorships on this channel. If I could post weekly, I could have maybe 4 sponsors a month. That would double my income. If I posted daily, that is 30-ish potential sponsorship spots. I doubt I could fill that many, but you can just see how that is a way bigger scope of brand deal potential. 5, 10, 15 sponsorships in a month, let alone on other platforms. And from what I've seen, vlogging and lifestyle content can be incredibly lucrative. It's like I talked about in the lifestyle content paradox video. If your life is your job, you're always working, but you're also just living, and everything can be monetized. Therefore, you have pretty much unlimited earning potential. You're writing off a ton of your stuff, you're sharing affiliate links and earning money from that. And of course, on top of everything, you are getting sent free stuff. PR. Sherry writes, our house became a revolving door of brand deals and swag. Clothes, tech, snacks, you name it, we reviewed it. Some days there were so many gifts that we couldn't even open them all. Boxes would sit for days in the hallway unopened. See, that is wild, and I would love to do a video about PR. I'm just baffled by the sheer volume that some creators receive. So often I see people be like, oh, I went away for the weekend, or I was gone on a trip and I came home to this literal mountain of packages. I currently only get regular PR from Hello Taco. I love their nail polish, though I haven't had time to actually paint my nails since baby was born, really. But in the most recent package, I got this really nice mug along with some new polishes, and I've been very excited about it. But still, I end up giving tons of these polishes away to friends, or I donate them because I can't possibly use more than a few nail polishes at a time. I cannot imagine getting even twice as much PR, let alone like 10 to 20 times this amount. It would stress me out, honestly. So many boxes to break down and recycle, so much stuff to organize. And again, you could never possibly use it all, so the waste would be weighing on me. Sherry continues, we got to go on lots of all expenses paid vacations, always with the omnipresent camera. It was crazy how different our lives had become. We used to make our own granola, spending hours canning fruit and clipping coupons and buying everything in bulk to save money. We'd gone from being a family that was proud of making do with less to one that had too much and more on the way. I feel like that's such a classic thing, again, for like really successful and rich influencers. Like, again, you start out relatable and like getting sent a few things here and there is really exciting. And then all of a sudden you have plenty of money, you can afford to buy whatever you want, and yet you're still getting sent tons of free stuff and getting to go on free trips. And it's just weird. I'm sure like what that does to your brain. First, there's the idea of fairness. It's like, oh, like, wouldn't it be cool if smaller channels or other people got all these cool opportunities and not just the people who could afford to do it anyway? But then there's the idea of like your mindset shifts and suddenly all these amazing, incredible, exciting things aren't even that exciting anymore because you get cool stuff and you get to do cool things all the time. Very interesting. Continuing on, Sherry starts to ask some questions about how this is affecting her as a kid. What are the lasting repercussions of growing up on camera without any say in the matter? How does that constant exposure shape a child's sense of self, their future relationships, their very understanding of privacy? And what does consent really look like when you're a child, too afraid to say no? Ruby might claim her kids were always on board, but the truth is, we never really had a choice in the matter. And that is extremely true. And often we hear these family vlogger channels say, no, the kids like it, they agree to be here, they enjoy this. But inherently, you're not equal, you know, voters here. The parents get to make the decision, and there's all the layers of complications where the kids are like, oh, well, this is our family's livelihood. I feel pressure to continue that. I can't just say no. I can't opt out. I don't want to make my parents upset. I don't want to make them disappointed in me, so I'm just going to keep playing along and continue earning money for the family and getting all these benefits. It's not easy to just say, hey, no, I'm out. Is that cool? But even for adults, this dynamic of being a public figure online can be very confusing and harmful. Sherry writes, what about Ruby? What might be the emotional repercussions of her snowballing online success? Those superficial rewards seem to fuel a vicious cycle, pushing her to seek more validation, more views, more content, often at the expense of her family. The most problematic element in our family dynamic, Ruby's relentless ambition, fueled by a potent mixture of unresolved pain and narcissism, had become the driving force of our existence. Again, I haven't gotten too deep into the actual like dynamics of what Ruby's behavior was like outside of the vlogging, but again, she was very controlling, very abusive, very emotionally erratic. The kids always felt like they were walking on eggshells. And here she is literally being validated by commenters and fans saying that she's a wonderful, perfect mom and the kids are turning out great. And of course, that's reinforcing her belief that yes, I'm right and everything I'm doing is right. I am a wonderful parent. Sherry wrote, as much as our fans have appreciated the story Ruby was selling, they had no idea what they were doing, enabling her, fueling her sense of righteousness and power as a mother who could do no wrong, and cheerleading her as she drifted further and further from reality. And I can't even imagine how painful that is as the child of that parent. Like, the public has no idea. Anyway, when Sherry turns 14, she decided to start her own YouTube channel for one reason: money. Naturally, she sees the opportunity and she's like, you know what? I would like to save up money for college and not have to work at like the grocery store, so maybe I'll do this YouTube thing for myself. She asks Ruby for permission and a shout out on the family channel to get herself started, and her mom says, no, you can have a shout out when you hit 100,000 subscribers. Consider it an incentive for you to treat it like a real business. I'll shout you out once you've built a channel worth promoting. Ruby, imagine if you had grown your channel by yourself without featuring all of your children. Would you have been able to build a successful channel just on your own? But of course, these parents believe that their children are a literal extension of themselves and like they own their children and therefore their success is linked. Sherry continued, I posted twice a week, and like my mom, I exploited my own siblings, doing shaving videos with my sisters and talking about periods because I knew it would get views. The guilt eats at me now, but back then I was just following the blueprint Ruby had laid out. This is what people like. This is what makes money, the personal stuff. And that's a really interesting moment. Again, she was a child and she had been raised in this environment, so it felt more or less normal to her, despite the fact that she didn't like vlogging. And it's sad for a child to feel guilt over exploiting their siblings in that same way that's been modeled by their parent. And again, going back to the fact that these very personal, private topics are typically the most popular when it comes to kids and teenagers. Again, why is it so popular? Of course, some of that viewership does come from other young kids, young girls, looking for advice from their peers. But not all those viewers are innocent and trying to just watch someone in a similar life stage, you know. So as time goes on and 8 Passengers continues to be more and more successful, Ruby was very proud, feeling that they were making a difference in other people's lives. They were showing an example of a great, happy LDS family. And Sherry writes, reading the comments, I had a different take. People wrote things like, I feel like I'm part of your family. I feel like I've grown up with you guys. You're like my siblings. I know everything about you. These comments left me with an uneasy feeling. It felt like a weird attachment, people latching onto families that weren't their own. Exactly, the parasocial relationship, especially for children, to be at the other end of that is very uncomfortable. Like, I've talked about meme kids before and how some of these children, like as young as like toddlers, get recognized in public or at Disneyland, and how confusing that is because to them, they shouldn't be a recognizable public figure. And also it's kind of weird, very weird, of like fully grown adults coming up to children that they do not know, but acting like they do. And I get having that connection. I have parasocial connections with some of the people I watch. Adults watching other adults, I feel like is different because again, the consent is there. And also adults tend to be more aware of like, I do realize this is parasocial. I don't actually know this person. And hopefully you can keep yourself in check. Next, I want to talk about Sherry's relationship with the audience and what viewers thought of her. Again, at this time, she was like 12 to like 15 years old. She's a teenager, unable to control what her mother is posting about or of her online, and she still has to face comments from this audience. Quote, my mind drifted to the comments I'd read about myself, words of strangers on YouTube who thought they knew me based on carefully edited snippets of my life. Ugh, Sherry is such a kiss ass. She's always ratting out her siblings and trying to be Ruby's favorite. So smug. In researching this, I was watching some compilation videos of like 8 Passengers' worst moments, and in one episode, the editor of the video added text and referred to Sherry as a snitch. I was baffled that somebody who knew about all the abuse in this family, in hindsight, was making this compilation video, and yet was still bullying this child for how she was portrayed in these videos. For essentially trying to stay on her abusive mother's good side by being an obedient and watchful older sibling. Just the cognitive dissonance of, as a viewer, knowing this painful dynamic exists in this household, and yet you still can't help participating making fun of this young girl. It is wild. Sherry wrote, I wished that these strangers who only saw what Ruby wanted them to see could understand that my obedience was born not out of adoration, but fear. That's really powerful. It's so twisted that, again, she's playing the character that her mother wants her to, or she's at least trying to be whatever her mom wants, trying to please her, and yet those very same efforts get her flack from the viewers. There's like no way for her to win. She continues with more examples of how her mother exploited her for views, such as one time when Ruby asked to wax her eyebrows for content. Quote, was this a moment of possible mother-daughter bonding or just another scene in our never-ending family sitcom? The line between genuine interaction and performance had blurred so completely that sometimes I wasn't sure any of us could tell the difference anymore. Ruby says, come on, Sherry, it'll be a great video for the channel. I'll give you $100. So, trying to bribe her kid to participate in a video. And unsurprisingly, Ruby messed up Sherry's eyebrow and then kept filming Sherry's reaction, and she, understandably, cried. I have to wonder if this was intentional on Ruby's part. Oh no, I accidentally ruined your eyebrow while filming. Sure enough, the video titled Sherry, I'm so sorry, with a thumbnail of me mid-ugly cry, racked up hundreds of thousands of views. Other examples include when Sherry was sick and her mom took her to urgent care and was filming, of course. Oh, somebody's sick or somebody's in the hospital. That's great for family vlogging content as well. And because she always wanted to, quote, be pleasant, be amiable for Ruby, no matter how crappy I felt, she tried to smile. And then her mom told her, oh no, that's not what we want. You can't smile. You're in urgent care. You're supposed to look like you're on your deathbed. The constant performance, literally being directed and told how to feel when she's literally ill. Then by Sherry's 15th birthday, her channel had finally gotten near 100,000 subscribers, and she gets a shout out from her mom on the 8 Passengers channel, which again was this weird transactional moment where she was like proud, but it felt very business. Very strange. At that point, Sherry had been earning a few $1,000s a month, and her mom controlled her AdSense account because she wasn't 18 yet. And Ruby says, by the way, I'm taking 10% off the top for management fees. You owe me, Sherry. Business is business. Classic momager, but like, what gets me again is as if the 8 Passengers channel would be anything without all the children. And truly, Ruby was already making plenty of money herself. Why did she need to take from her child's earnings too? A little bit greed, but probably, again, goes down to control and reminding her daughter that like, hey, I'm still the boss. Even if this is yours, I'm taking some of it. Then in basically the middle of the book, that's when everything about Jodi Hildebrandt comes in. But essentially, Sherry's younger brother, Chad, had been acting out, rebelling a little bit. He was like 13-ish at the time. And their parents, Ruby and Kevin, get introduced to Jodi and her life coaching program connections. And almost immediately, Jodi recommends sending Chad away to a wilderness therapy program for bad teens, which we now know are notorious for abuse. So Chad gets sent away to this wilderness program for 3 months. And in the meantime, Ruby and Kevin agree to spend thousands of dollars on Jodi's treatments and therapy sessions for themselves and also for the kids. First Chad and then Sherry. Again, if you're interested in learning more about like the actual dynamic between Ruby and Jodi, it is very fascinating and very sickening. I highly recommend reading the whole book. But essentially, Jodi's teachings had been turning Ruby into an even worse version of herself. Sherry wrote, Ruby's punishments became more psychological in nature, more focused on our emotions and minds than our bodies. And then there's finally this huge moment where the facade of the 8 Passengers channel cracks and viewers finally notice, with a big wave of attention, that things have not been good. There may have been little hints here and there, but this was like the watershed moment. May 2020, in a video titled, What We Haven't Told You, Chad dropped a bomb that would soon detonate our family's carefully curated image. He mentioned casually that he'd been sleeping on a beanbag on the basement floor for 7 whole months. On Jodi's advice, Ruby removed Chad's bedroom privileges as punishment for continued defiance. Ruby saw nothing unusual about this. Chad acted like he didn't care. When he let slip during filming what his current sleeping arrangements were, he did it so coolly, I doubt Ruby even noticed. But Ruby's new editor did, and he made Chad's revelation the focus of the video, misguidedly thinking it would be interesting content. Ruby didn't hesitate to post it. This is obviously a very fascinating moment, and it reflects the depths of Ruby's delusions and how far she had gotten from understanding what was normal and acceptable parenting, because again, she had been encouraged by Jodi and like her own abusive tactics had only been strengthened. But yeah, the fact that she didn't see anything wrong with it, keeps it in the video, has no concern about backlash or her viewers potentially thinking anything is wrong with this because she genuinely believed the audience is going to support me. They know I'm right. This is a great parenting choice. So this was when most of the internet outside of the family vlogging realm learns about 8 Passengers and starts to pay attention to what is happening and what has been happening. Quote, the internet went ballistic. Ruby's face paled as she scrolled through the comments. YouTubers and TikTokers were accusing her of child abuse. But this is all wrong. They don't understand. Kevin suggested, maybe we should take the video down so we don't lose subscribers. No, Ruby snapped. Jodi said we need to stand firm in our truth. We can't let the haters win. Even well-meaning criticism about literal child abuse is just the haters. Sherry writes, that one video burned down the 8 Passengers YouTube channel overnight and cost our family 90% of our income, hundreds of thousands unsubscribed, and brands once eager to associate with our wholesome family image couldn't distance themselves fast enough. This always makes me wonder about vloggers, like just the sheer amount of footage that these channels upload. How much content has already been posted and how many families are overdue for similar reckonings? But like, you know, most of their viewers are either children or people who are clearly fine with like family vlogging and don't see anything wrong with these sorts of behaviors or punishments. It's like family vlogging channels are overdue for like a major audit, but it would take the manpower of like thousands and thousands of viewers to be able to sort through all of that. I don't know. Like, I think we're gonna continue to hear more as these children grow up and talk about the reality of what happened, but it also goes to show, like, again, the ego and the hubris of so strongly believing that you're right that you do keep something in. Like, again, editing is an active choice. You can choose what to cut out. And other vloggers, I'm sure, do cut out things that they know their audience would not respond well to. But it's just interesting what either falls through the cracks or what is intentionally left in, and then the creators become aware, oh, that actually doesn't resonate with my audience the way I thought it would. Oops. But again, does that make them change their behavior because that's the right thing to do, or do they just get more careful in what is edited? So then again, I'm skipping a lot more about Jodi, but essentially Sherry, in being forced to do sessions with Jodi, gets sucked into the cult for a while, but eventually she's able to pull herself out, realizing that Jodi's total bullshit and contradicts herself all the time. Jodi convinces Ruby and Kevin to separate. Jodi moves into the house with Ruby, and then Ruby ends up cutting Sherry off as she's gone off to college at BYU. So now she's removed from the family and she's out of the loop in terms of what's happening to her younger siblings, and she's very concerned about that. As her mom gets sucked deeper and deeper in, and it's clear that Ruby and Jodi are just like off the rails. They're making these like connections videos for the cult. Like, people can see what's happening. So much of this is documented online. Sherry writes, Reddit exploded. Word had gotten out that Kevin and Chad were no longer living at home, and the internet, with its insatiable appetite for our family drama, had latched onto this information. Rumors were spreading, theories were being formed on Reddit and other forums about what was going on, questioning my role in everything. I'm so fascinated also by, like, again, snark pages' role in this, fan and like hater speculation, whether that's on YouTube and commentary videos or drama channels or TikTokers. Again, many of these fans are well-meaning and trying to figure out like what's going on. Is there any way that somebody can help? But of course, many people are also tuned in for the drama of it all, for the entertainment. So as Sherry is kind of directly and indirectly being asked like what her role is in this and if she's like okay with it all, she feels compelled to post an Instagram story. I know there are many rumors circulating online about my family. While it is true I am not in contact with my immediate family and don't support the extreme beliefs of connections, please remember that this is my real family. Despite good intentions, speculating, rumors, and gossip doesn't help us. I'd like to ask for privacy for me and my family as we work through this very difficult situation. I'm very proud of her for posting that because, of course, even addressing any of this publicly was a very like risky, scary thing to do in terms of how her mother would react. And I'm sure it felt terrifying to like acknowledge everything finally, but also not be able to share. Of course, she's not going to get into like details of everything because again, ideally the internet would not be entitled to all of the messy, complicated, painful details of the situation. But it's so wrapped up in public and private, and that's why family vlogging gets so messy. You're making so much of your life the public's business, and it's hard to take that back once people are so invested. So that Instagram story, of course, only added fuel to the fire, and people were again trying to read between the lines and figure out what was going on. This is something I'm struck by over and over reading this book is like, again, how strange it must feel to be forced into the spotlight, not only on YouTube, because they're like not posting on 8 Passengers anymore, but still, there are tons of forums and so many dedicated fans, and the attention just never stops. And on one hand, some of these people were trying to help, or at least were trying to be supportive on behalf of the kids, but it's still an invasion of privacy. It's like, thank you for the support, but like, why are strangers contacting me about this very personal stuff? It's a weird space to be in. She writes, the internet was ablaze with reactions, particularly on Reddit, where former 8 Passengers fans expressed their shock and disgust at Ruby's trajectory. But Ruby seemed oblivious to the outcry. She had retreated into an echo chamber of her own making, severing ties with everyone who might challenge her worldview. She had found her role as Jodi's devoted disciple, and it seemed nothing could shake her from it. Obviously, again, from like the true crime lens of this, as this turns from just like influencer drama to like, oh, there's like some culty things happening here. Obviously, that is like extremely fascinating for a lot of viewers, and people just can't get enough of like the downfall and just how warped Ruby and Jodi could be. Finally, on August 30th, 2023, the police showed up at Jodi's house and arrested Jodi and Ruby for aggravated child abuse. Again, I don't want to get into the details of it, but it is truly horrific what the youngest 2 siblings went through. The situation was just unspeakable, and I am so grateful that they were able to get out. Of course, they and their other siblings are going to be scarred by this forever, but at the very least, Jodi and Ruby did have to face consequences. So after their arrests, Sherry makes it her personal mission to ensure that they get charged with like the highest charges possible, because she really doesn't want them to slide their way out of this and pretend like, oh, I was taken advantage of by Jodi, I was brainwashed, or Jodi acting like some kind of a victim somehow. So Sherry talks about how she enlisted the help of internet sleuths and former fans in order to find more evidence from the 8 passengers' videos. She wrote, the evidence of her pre-existing abuse that was already out there online in the form of 1,300 8 passengers videos she'd made during her 7 years of vlogging. Alongside all the other evidence, those videos would surely provide proof that Ruby had utilized harsh and excessive discipline against her children long before Jodi came on the scene. The thought of going through more than 1,000 videos was overwhelming, so I posted a story on Instagram inviting people to DM me questionable or concerning clips from Ruby's old videos. The response was immediate, supportive, and enthusiastic. So she's getting all these tips and all the help collecting evidence. She puts it into a Google Doc. She wrote, what an ironic reversal. The woman obsessed with sharing her most intimate family moments online in exchange for fame and money was about to be exposed by those very same videos. Thank God for that. You know, that's one good outcome of this, is at least the evidence was out there and there was plenty of it. Again, the ego to post your own incriminating evidence and not even think that there's anything wrong with it. And then finally, on February 20th, 2024, the day of Ruby's sentencing, Sherry, her brother Chad, and their dad Kevin show up to court, and they're trying to avoid the media because, of course, again, the attention has been exhausting and overwhelming. They're part of this true crime circus and people just can't get enough, which is very dehumanizing. Both Ruby and Jodi were sentenced to 4 sentences of 4 to 15 years to be served consecutively. To me, a major takeaway of the end of this book is, again, what it is like experiencing true crime as the subject. And it's a reminder that true crime happens to real people. Of course, as viewers, it can be fascinating and entertaining, but for those experiencing it or their friends and family, it is excruciating. And I think it's important for us all to remember to be sensitive when we're consuming this kind of content. Sherry talks about her conflicted relationship with the media, and I'm sure even in writing this book, the conflict of wanting to take control of the narrative and finally be able to use her own voice as now a 21-year-old adult instead of having her mother speak for her. But taking control of the narrative requires sharing more, opening herself up to the public, being wrapped up in these shocking, exploitative exposés and documentaries. She talks about commentary channels who in some way have helped to immortalize and save a lot of the footage that would have been lost, but also again, a lot of this coverage tends to be shock focused and just exploit their pain and suffering and really dig deep into the details of the abuse that she and her siblings experienced. Sherry herself had tried to avoid the details and the photos, the abuse that her siblings faced, and she got surprised with it while a documentary team was filming her watching an episode of 2020. It's just so brutal. And still to this day, her biggest priority is protecting her siblings and letting them share their own stories if someday they wish to. She wants them to have that autonomy and the privacy if they never want to talk about it publicly, which honestly, I do not blame that at all if they take that route. She writes, everyone else, please just stop. Let them heal in peace. Let us all heal. But everyone was talking about it. The news, social media, even people on the street, dissecting every detail, feeding this true crime circus. Didn't they understand? These are children, my siblings, real people who have suffered unimaginable horrors. And lastly, one of Sherry's biggest takeaways is to ban family vlogging. She's been campaigning for, at the very least, more protections and more controls within this genre, within the industry. But ultimately, she would like to see family vlogging banned, and that is completely understandable from her point of view. One interesting thing I want to touch on is, again, the fact that Ruby's siblings are family vloggers themselves, and I wanted to see how they responded. Obviously, it's complicated talking about something so painful. Basically, they all said that they had been kind of estranged and that Ruby had cut them off years before, so they weren't aware of the abuse. But the big elephant in the room to me was okay, but then Sherry comes out against family vlogging, and I think most or all of Ruby's siblings are still vlogging their kids. And it's yes, of course, Ruby's abuse was substantial and you could say unrelated to the family vlogging, but the vlogging is in itself a very big issue as well. Wouldn't this whole situation make you stop and reflect and reassess whether this is something that's good for your family. But again, I think especially the LDS angle of this, the drive to document your family and share all of this to the world, I think that drive is so strong and so hard to deny or resist. And again, they're told that this documentation is very good and that it does passive missionary work for the church. So how could they believe that it could possibly be a bad thing and possibly be harmful for their own children? I think there is a lot of cognitive dissonance there, I assume. Bonnie addressed this specifically and essentially said, we did sit down, we talked about it with our family, but our kids said they still want to participate. Which again, the same problem as usual. I don't know if I can totally trust or believe that, and they might change their minds later. We might hear different things once their kids are older. I forgot to mention that also all of Ruby's family members still have vlogs of the Frankie kids on their own channels, and I just think, okay, if you're gonna stay vlogging with your family, that's one thing, but out of respect for all these kids, take down those videos, private those videos. I literally cannot imagine. They probably didn't even think about it, but it's like, come on. And lastly, Sherry's last personal update was on Instagram in December 2024. I'm excited to share that I'm engaged. However, for me, this is the end of me sharing my private life. I've had my voice and agency taken for so long, and now I'm putting my foot down. I'm not going to talk about my wedding, future husband, or future kids. I'll continue to advocate for kids who don't have a voice, but this is closure for me. I'm moving on with my life, and that's true freedom and joy. And I think that was really brave and a really wonderful thing to do. I'm so glad that she felt empowered to draw that boundary for herself and finally be able to be in control of her own life and her privacy and what sort of narrative she wants to put out. I'm just very happy for her, proud of her, and I really hope that she and her siblings are able to heal and live in peace privately. That is all. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for future internet analysis videos. And once again, thank you Rocket Money for sponsoring today's video. You can go to the link in the description and make an account for free today. Okay, thanks, bye!